It's 4 o'clock on my watch. So let me call this July 20th meeting of the Concord Select Board to order. The first item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda, which includes minutes to approve of June 4th, June 15th, June 19th in open session, June 19th, 2020 in executive session not to be released, June 22nd and 23rd in open session, June 23rd in executive session not to be released, July 1st in open session, July 1st in executive session not to be released, July 6th and July 13th, and July 13th, a joint meeting with the Finance Committee. Also, a gift acceptance, the Spalding Management LLC donating a picnic table valued at $898 to the Concord Visitor Center. We thank Sharon Spalding very much for that kind gift. And I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Escobedo? Aye.
Thank you. I note it passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the town manager's update. Mr. Town Manager.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I do want to comment briefly on the gift from Sharon Spalding. That's, I think I may have mentioned in past reports, one of the things we're working on as part of through Concord Together and the Economic Vitality Committee is kind of an outdoor placemaking activity that we're in partnership with the Umbrella as well. Basically taking picnic tables or tables and chairs and having artists from the Umbrella decorate them or paint them or make them interesting and give people not only a public art experience, but also a place to eat outdoors and get some takeout and enjoy our outdoor spaces. And so that picnic table is a part of that as well. And actually I have heard from the National Park Service that they are also highly interested in participating in that effort. And it's something that I don't know how much has been tried in the past in Concord, but I think it's one of the many new and creative ways that townspeople are trying to manage the pandemic and the response to it. So I think it's a very generous donation, but also for a very fun and innovative program that we're doing. Speaking of that, we did receive approval as a part of a larger grant. I think a press release just went out this afternoon. The Community Development Block Grant COVID-19 response, otherwise known as the CDBG-CV grant program that I think I have spoken to the board about before. The town of Concord was as part of a much larger group and award. We received about $210,000 to help micro businesses, which is businesses with fewer than 5 employees. There are a few exceptions, businesses that I think have either that are protected in other parts of the relief packages or have done well. So it's not every single business. For example, real estate businesses are excluded from it. But if you're a small shopkeeper and you have a retail or restaurant space, you could, I think, generally be eligible. So the town of Ashland and working with Metropolitan Area Planning Commission has taken the lead on it. And so they are developing what we think will be a very straightforward application. So once that application is available, we'll make sure to get it out to the business community so they can get some assistance. So we also received another positive news in that we received what's called our Chapter 91 Waterways permit from DEP, from Massachusetts DEP for the Nagog Pond intake project. I think as I reported before, we had received an extension to start and complete that work from the Acton Select Board, but we had yet to receive that permit from Mass DEP, which was seemingly significantly delayed. So we finally did get that permit and the conditions were nothing unexpected. So we're going to keep moving forward on that project as well, which will be a big step in sort of the long-term in terms of the long-term ability to provide quality water from Nagog. The intake part of it was really an essential part of the overall project, which also includes a water treatment facility. We also they've been dealing with all day a water main break in the Peter Springs area. And one of those things that's like, thanks for the reminder as to why we have a major water main project that's about to start out that way. They've been dealing with leaks. So I don't know if you're hearing from any residents, but that whole section is supposed to be, the water main is supposed to be replaced, but I know they're out there. They were out there today working on it. And I did forget to mention when we were talking about the picnic tables that the Library Board of Trustees Corporation did purchase some cafe tables and chairs that have been put out in front of the library for the same purpose, just allow people who may be downtown but want to sit someplace and either read a book outside or have have a cup of coffee or something. Those have been put out, and they were, again, through the generous contribution of the trustees from the library. We also have two other important things coming up. First is next week, there will be a public hearing, or not public hearings, a public information session about the Giroux project. That'll be, I think, next Tuesday at 6 p.m. via Zoom. So I believe that's posted on our website. It'll be Kate Hodges and I believe Ryan Kane will present an update on the project and some of the changes that have happened as the design has evolved. So if people want to learn more about Giroux, they can participate in that. And then on Wednesday, July 29th, we are scheduled to have a drive-in movie at the parking lot at Concord Carlisle High School. The final details of that have not been nailed down, other than we are going to be asking for contributions in order to get tickets through an online, I think through our rec department's online platform. I think we are showing Raiders of the Lost Ark, which would be kind of a fun summer blockbuster movie. And I believe the showtime starts around 8:00. So please, keep an eye out for additional specific details. We do believe capacity is limited to 100 vehicles. So if you can have, 4 or 5 people in your vehicle, it can be a pretty fun and reasonable night out. We have not tied it directly to marketing of local businesses. We spent a lot of time talking about ways where we could do that, but just couldn't find a way to make it kind of a broad-based approach. And so we're just doing it as a community event, but I do know individual businesses will be developing some marketing opportunities in conjunction with the drive-in. So I think we've seen a few other communities do these to great effect. And so I'm kind of looking forward to kind of a fun night there. Similarly, there was a sidewalk sale on Saturday. If anyone was downtown this past Saturday, I came by and I heard generally positive feedback. We did block a handful of parking spaces on Walden Street. From what I saw, there was a lot of activity. I guess the way I described it, it was signs of life, which I think retailers and restaurateurs were really, really looking for. And for the amount of marketing that went into it, which quite honestly was not that much, I thought it looked very successful. Like I said, I got a lot of positive feedback. It was kind of a proof of concept moment. Like, can the retailer, can the businesses in the downtown or in any district for that matter, organize, communicate with each other, and rally around a shared date and concept, and will it work? And I think, at least from my eye, the concept was definitely proven, and I don't think we've seen the last of the sidewalk sales, and I think we'll probably see more of them potentially in the other business districts as well. So I would call that a really fun and great event. And then so the second to last thing I have is I will be taking a little bit of time off in the first 2 weeks of August, just a heads up to the board. And then the last thing I have, and Chief O'Connor is here with me, we have a pretty significant announcement. We did reach an agreement with the Concord Police Association on the implementation of a body and car dash-mounted cameras for our police department. We sent out a press release on Friday, but the short of it is we will be moving to implement this important program, which, like I said, it's a combined body camera and dash camera the systems are connected. The equipment cost is just under $200,000. And under the terms of our agreement, the town will evaluate the impact of both the both the implementation of this program and also evaluate the impact of COVID-19 response. And if an adjustment needs to be made based on this implementation, we would work with the police department, with the police union to do that. So Chief O'Connor, I don't know if you want to talk more about the merits of it. I do know that, and I want to commend Chief O'Connor here because, I think that everyone understands the times we're in, and I want the Concord Police Association certainly understood the times we're in and the nature of policing, and really, I think a strong community desire to make sure that our police department is being as progressive as possible. And this agreement, I think, is a demonstration of that desire combined with the trust that Chief O'Connor has cultivated with his department. And so I guess I'll turn it over to you, Chief, to talk a little further about it. And to say, this is not a very commonplace thing here on unfortunately, it's not common in the Commonwealth, but I am elated that we were able to work this out.
Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Chairman, members of the Select Board, I'm Joseph O'Connor, Chief of Police. Just to piggyback on the comments Stephen just made, we do believe in the police department that this is an important initiative. Police across the country has been painted with a broad brush. I don't think I've put out a couple statements about the things that have happened around the country, which we at the police department find horrible, gut-wrenching when we view videos of certain things that have occurred. Not the type of behavior that we expect and that we know from our police department. However, we have a community that demands that we provide exceptional service. We have visitors from throughout the world, throughout this Commonwealth, people that work in this community, and having this integrated body-worn and in-dash cameras that will help us, meet the expectations of the people that live and come into town. I want to commend the union, particularly the leadership of Officer Sergeant Jeff Shelley and his executive board and all the members of the department. We worked for a number of years to build a level of trust that we have to get an agreement like this. We all read things in the media and the challenges that communities have. They're trying to implement new programs, and I have to commend them for being partners, full partners with the town to ensure that we provide exceptional service. This will show community that our actions are legitimate, build further trust. There are segments of folks in our community that are questioning policing, and again, we're caught up in that broad brush. I have answered, some of the points that Concord Indivisible asked about, the 8 can't wait and so forth, and the things that people discuss about, examples like chokeholds, things that we do not have in Massachusetts that aren't even taught, but people think that these are things that occur in our community because they've happened in other places. So we'll continue to try to communicate with our residents, and we do believe that this camera project will provide a extremely high level of transparency for the police department. And like I said, we've worked for a long time to get to this level, and I appreciate Stephen helping us push this across the goal line to get this done. I think this again shows Concord is being a leader and addressing some of the issues that are occurring in our society.
Thank you, Chief. And before I turn to questions, I'm sure rest of my colleagues on the board joining me in congratulating you and the town manager and the police union for doing just exactly what the town would have expected you to do. And that is go out of your way to ensure that our police department continues to provide excellent public service we've always counted on. So congratulations to you all. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for those comments.
Are there any questions for the town manager? Jane?
First of all, I just wanted to again thank Chief O'Connor and Stephen on this achievement. Concord receives many grants and many opportunities to, excuse my dog, to be progressive and to show our leadership. And this is one more place where we have done it well. And it's because of the leadership that manages our departments here. So thank you. I know that in my household, which has very activist young people in it, this has not gone unnoticed. It doesn't mean it'll ever be enough, but that's what 20-something-year-olds who are, on the front lines of a lot of the social issues out there will feel. But I do know that this is an important, and I wanted to recognize what a large step this is. And when we do it, it proves to others who perhaps have a harder road to hoe on it, that it can be done. So thank you. Stephen, I had a couple questions on the, just an observation on the drive-in, which sounds really exciting, and I want to get my ticket as soon as possible. But when you said 5 to a car, I just wanted to put out the reminder to everybody. That means 5 family members or 5 people who are already quarantining together, because, I mean, there'd be nothing more fun than to put a pickup truck full of your best friends, but that's not what we're doing.
That's an excellent point.
And likewise, I was wondering if in any of these, the gifts and the great, the sidewalk, the picnic table and the cafe tables, are we going to be supplying any sanitizer at those tables so that people who use them can make sure? Sorry about this. Hang on.
So to answer Jane's question, there are guidelines about having these types of seating opportunities available, and we are still working through who takes responsibility. The town would certainly happily supply the supplies, but who has how often they need to be cleaned, right, and who has responsibility. We're still working on that. It's more just, let's figure out how to get them, because we didn't really have any. So let's figure out how to get a few places to sit and work with the umbrella to make them artful and go from there. But now we do know that we also may need to rely on some volunteers to help with that. So stay tuned on that part of it.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Susan?
I want to just ditto what Jane said to the police chief and the town manager. Thank you. That is a big step. I had a couple of questions. One was about the $210,000 in grant money for the micro enterprises. I was wondering, how can we get the word out so that people know, small businesses know that this funding is available?
So Marcia is here, and she did help get a press release generated, and I do want to commend Marcia Rasmussen for her leadership, along with Beth Williams, our tourism coordinator, for the work that they've done to get this, to get us partnered with MAPC and have the successful outcome of the grant. But we have, I think, developed a pretty good pathway of communication between the town and the business community, be it through Concord Together or the Economic Vitality Committee or the business partnership with the Chamber. I mean, one of the things that I think has happened, especially over the last, say, 2 months, is the collaboration and communication amongst the business community and its various, groups has really been significant. Linda, or Susan, you're on the Economic Vitality Committee's liaison. You've seen it. The level of cooperation and communication has grown every week. Yeah. And so I think we're going to make sure we communicate through those means. We're going to publicize it through news and notices and social media and all those other places. But really, to get the help where we think it's most needed, we'll be working directly with the content, the points of contact that we have for businesses.
Thank you. I just had one other question or comment. I did go downtown on Saturday, and the energy was so positive. All of the shopkeepers were excited about being able to engage with the customers again. Everybody had their masks on and were being respectful, and it was a good opportunity, and you'll have others, to check off those boxes on your summer solstice little form that you can get from the visitor center. So yeah, that's what it looks like.
I left this in my office, but the one I have I brought the wife and kids, and the one I got from Saturday is pretty filled in. We did some work in that regard.
Yeah, okay. And thanks to all the merchants who sponsored that. That was great.
Harry, did you have a question?
I just wanted to comment. I think Susan and Jane and you, Mike, have already expressed, but just to say again, what a really good team you have here, Stephen, with you and the department heads, and so much good news this week. It's great to have some good news. So the micro business grant and the Mass DEP permit, the police agreement with the body cams, the Giroux hearing is a really good idea, and the movie. I think this is, and there were other things this is a really good week of news. I wanted to just thank you, Stephen, and the whole team.
I appreciate that, Terry. Can I leave the meeting now, like that high note, and walk away? Can I?
Yep.
Ready for vacation.
Yeah.
Start your vacation today.
Yeah, right.
Are there any other questions for the town manager? Matt?
My question, I don't know if it's for the town manager or Chief O'Connor. It was about the body cam and dash cam policies. I don't know if this is the right moment, but I'd be just curious to understand, under what circumstances that footage is shared with the public and how that would happen in those cases. I know that this is kind of one of those points that varies with departments, and I'm just curious what the approach that you've taken is.
So we have not finalized. We're in our third draft on our policy. So we still have a little bit of work to do on the policy itself, but certainly we'll have a clear policy which I'd share with the community when it's complete. But it will not be for every single interaction, because there are a number of interactions that quite frankly don't warrant it. But anytime there's any motor vehicle stop, which is the vast majority of interactions that we have, anytime the lights on the cruiser go on, those cameras will be on. That'll provide a lot of benefit. Anytime there's any type of situation that involves criminal activity, investigations, the cameras will be on. We're still, we're very fortunate. The union is working very closely with us on the policy, and there are a couple departments in the state that have already have policies in place that we're looking at those, but we're going to tweak them to make sure they meet the expectations of our community. And when it's complete, we will share that with the community.
Yeah, well, I do want to reinforce the point that the union and the police administration are really co-writing the policy, which was something that was important from us from the very beginning, and sorting through what I think are some, some aspects to it, like I said, the third draft. But I when I saw that process had already started before I kind of checked in on this, and really, it's really, like I said, a tremendous credit to the chief and the union that they were. That they viewed what should be in the policy so closely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief, too. The next item on our agenda is chair's remarks. I just have a couple. First, I do want to congratulate Marcia and Beth on the grant. That was excellent news. I, too, spent about 2 hours at downtown on Saturday visiting with merchants, and I just echoed that it seemed like quite a successful day. In meeting with the chair of the finance committee and the town manager, we've been working to finalize a set of new public hearings that we're going to have for town meeting, and we have set the dates for those public hearings. And they are, the first is August the 17th, which will be a joint select board finance committee public hearing. And then on the 18th, a finance committee hearing, and on the 19th, the planning board will meet. And we will post, not all warrant articles are going to be dealt with at these public hearings. Most of the articles are were dealt with in our previous ones, but particularly those where there have been a lot of changes like budgets and the like, and the tax incentive financing agreement are going to be revisited. And then, as I know I've said in a previous select board meeting, the planning board will be reviewing all of its proposed warrant articles, even those that will be referred back to the committee. So we will post those dates along with which articles will be heard at which public hearing. And after the public hearings have been completed, the package of this set of public hearings and the previous ones will be put together as background and particularly important information for this year's annual town meeting. Because as you'll recall from the moderator, there will be no presentations at the annual town meeting. Instead, there'll be a document distributed to everybody attending, which will be the motions and summary material. But the detailed information and presentations, we are going to rely on those public hearings. So I think it's important for us to, in addition to posting the appropriate notice of these public hearings, we continue to say at each one of our meetings and wherever we can so that we get the broadest attention to these hearings. And the public hearings will be just that. There'll be a Zoom, but in addition to the presentation by the presenter, there'll be questions from the public. So August 17th, 18th, and 19th. So thank you. The next item on our agenda is...
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did leave one thing off my town manager's update. Could I just go back to that for 1 minute?
I thought you were on vacation.
Mentally, maybe.
That's okay.
No, I forgot to mention in the discussion about I meant to mention this before I went into the body cams. There was a fire on structure fire on Barnes Hill Road last night. And I just want to note that the quick work of both our dispatch department and our police department, especially Sergeant O'Connell, who was the first on scene, really positively altered the outcome of that event based on the feedback I received from the fire department. So it wasn't in the news today, and it was probably in large part because of the work done by Sergeant O'Connell and the dispatcher Savault and the work of both police and then the entire work of the police and fire departments. But I just wanted to relay that also a bit of good news. It was definitely a heads up play by them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, the next item on our agenda is Ag Day. I see Happy is with us. So Happy was with us last time. And what I did in the between meetings is I reached out to Susan Rask, our public health director, to get her guidance, and she forwarded to me, which I believe Jeremy sent around to everybody today, indoor and outdoor event checklists for the Commonwealth. And I'll just read this one last part. Large capacity event venues and activities organized to draw together large crowds must continue to remain closed until phase 4. We're in phase 3B. This includes venues used for groups or spectator sports, entertainment, business, and cultural events, including long list, street festivals and parades, and agricultural festivals. So I don't, this isn't, I think they're talking, when they talk about agricultural festivals, they're likely talking about the big ag fairs that they have around the state, but I don't know how to interpret this. So it's certainly an agricultural festival, and it's meant to bring people together. So I'm really perplexed as to how to move forward on this. No, I'll answer at once.
Yeah, so Mike, I guess I've spent a little bit of time looking at this, and I think it's, what is a farmer's market and what is an agricultural festival? And I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Ag Day, but having attended last year, is it a strict farmer's market? I don't know if it is. Could we structure it in a way where it would meet that? Possibly, but to get a benefit out of it for the entire downtown community, would you need to do things that would make it look more like an agricultural festival, which is a phase 4 thing. I think so. Although, I mean, and I think only Charlie Baker could probably answer this question, but the prohibition on agricultural festivals, is that really intended for a county fair or something like that? So it's clear, I think, what the difference in the guidance is in terms of what is, what can you do for a farmer's market versus what can you do for agricultural festival. What is less clear to me is what is Ag Day, and I think that's really and let me say this: we are ready to support it in any way we can if the decision is to move forward. But I think there are certain things, entertainment options, activities beyond just the sale of agricultural products that, could be, tilting in the direction of an agricultural fair. So, I guess I think if we have, for my purposes, I'd want to learn more about that.
All right, Jane, and then Cherry.
I was going to suggest, and I appreciate Stephen's quandary, because I'm stuck thinking about the same questions. One thing we could do, depending on what Happy has to tell us, would be to reach out to Tammy Gouveia and ask her specifically as our rep to investigate this on behalf of the agricultural community in Concord, if that seems like it would be useful and a path we want to go in.
Jerry?
That's a good idea, Jane. I have what is probably a stupid question. They say there's no such thing, but anyway, what is the difference between the sidewalk sale that we just had this Saturday and the Ag Day, in terms of whether we can do it or not?
Yeah.
I can give you my in looking at both events, Terry. The streets weren't closed. We closed a handful of parking spaces, and it was really just individual businesses selling their own things, and there wasn't like entertainment. We didn't have like a band or anything like that. And all of the individual, it was a composite of a series of individual activities happening in front of their storefronts. And so it really was just general retail business with a few parking spaces closed and some shared marketing. I don't know if Ag Day fits that description or not. I've only been one time. So, but when you get into street closures and entertainment and things like that, that's where I think it gets a little gray.
There's not much entertainment, but there were, a number of like small games that kids could play. There was the restaurants were open so people could pop in to the Street Cafe or Helen's or the cheese shop or wherever and get something, but there was no food on the street kind of activity. Jane, your suggestion of Tammy, on the one hand, I understand why that's a good thing, but I don't but I don't want to put her in an uncomfortable spot. I wonder if my approach to this, I think, would be to provide the information that was provided to me by Susan Rask. I just sent one page of it to you. She provided me with 3 or 4 pages from the government's website, and asked the Ag Committee to review this, because there are steps that they have to take. There's things that they have to do, just like a store if it's going to open, and to have them look at what the requirements would have to be in order for this to be able to go forward, and then perhaps hear back from them. Because I agree with Steve, and we could probably manage it either way, but we're going to have to, the Ag Committee is a town committee, and so we're going to have to be responsible for all of the safety and health precautions if we're going to go ahead with this. And I'd like the Ag Committee to review this and get back to us with some statement if they think it can be done or can't be done. Linda?
Yeah, Mike, I think that's a reasonable approach. One of the reactions I have to what happened Saturday for the stores on the street doing their street sales, there wasn't a lot of advanced publicity for that. So the crowds, while there was good energy for that event, the Ag Day attracts usually a large crowd once it's publicized. I'm wondering what precautions the farmers markets have had to take in other towns that are doing them, if we were to treat it more like a farmer's market, because I know they've had to make some adjustments for health reasons, as Mike has suggested, need to be checked.
Well, I don't, I just anecdotally, because I drove by the Carlisle Farmers Market, it was last Saturday, and they had sanitation and they had people spread out and they were monitoring how many people could go. And it's held over by Kimball's Ice Cream on
Right.
25. And they were, they had spread it out, but that's a very small event, not in the center of town, and quite different. The farms.
I do believe some of them are have to package the vegetables in a different way.
Yeah.
I don't think all of them are doing that, but I know some of them are.
Any other comments? So, Happy, are you still with us?
I am. I'm on a phone, unfortunately. Basically, we know that there are going to be different presentations of the farmers and the farms at the market, that there would be a route in and out of the stalls, and which brings up a possibility of moving it to a non-street venue, which might help a lot. We have had some comments from some merchants that they don't get their traffic when we're on the street. And so I'm not sure how they will feel if we are taking their few clients away again. So another temporary place might be better. I have about 8 farms that are interested in being in the market. We would not have tables for nonprofits and other groups that like to be represented, but definitely it would just be more like a straight farmer's market than anything else.
Where do you have ideas about an alternative venue?
Well, one possibility we thought might be up around the green in front of the inn, or on the monument side where the flags are and so forth, around the rectory there of the church.
Have you thought about using like a school parking lot, like Alcon or something?
I think most people might feel that's a little too removed, but we could talk about it. It also might be just thinking, how about Haywood Meadow?
I don't. Well, listen, Happy, I'm going to send you along the material that was sent to me by Susan Marask. And I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you in the Ag Committee to please review it and come back to us with a statement. I don't think you need to have a plan yet, but a statement that you guys have reviewed this and you have some idea about how you could mobilize this effort to keep the public safe. And I think you're probably going to have to rope in talking with the chief, and I don't know about Public Works, but at least the chief in terms of crowd control and the like. Jane, is that a hand or are you swatting flies?
It's a little bit of both. I didn't mean to be, constant. There are flies. I was just going to offer to be a go-between here, and Happy, feel free to use me if I can be useful.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Does that seem reasonable to everybody?
Yeah.
All right, that's what we'll do then. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us, Happy.
Okay.
The
Thank you.
next item on our agenda is the approved 1/12 budget for August. Carrie LaFleur, I see, is with us. It turns out that while we approved 3 months, the Department of Revenue wants us to approve it on a monthly basis. Ms. LaFleur,
Well, you're stealing my presentation, Mr. Chair.
I'm terribly sorry.
So,
Please feel free to repeat.
so as the chair mentioned, last month I was here and we talked about monthly budgets for July, August, and September. And I thought we could be efficient and have you approve all 3 at one time, even though we knew we could only submit one month at a time. So when we went last week to submit the August budget, the Department of Revenue let us know that they would like the select board to consider the monthly budget 1 month at a time. So I'm here to talk to you about August again, and then I'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about September. We also learned a couple of other pieces of information as we went through this first month of our monthly budget. The state has indicated that they want to see at least 1/12 approved each month, regardless of what we think our monthly expenditure is. So you may recall that when we talked about the 3 months together, the month of August was lower than 1/12 of the appropriation, even when we put in a contingency for maybe some unanticipated expenditure. What the state has come back and they said, if your spending is less than 1/12, you need to at least approve 1/12. So we've made some revisions to August to make sure that we're spending at least 1/12 of the monthly budget. They've also thrown a little wrinkle in our operations. We have a number of contracts, service contracts that extend for a year, but we're billed monthly for them. We have several in the Board of Health for nursing services and food inspection and such. And the Department of Revenue has said that they won't allow the town accountant to sign off on an annual service contract unless 100% of the funding has already been appropriated or approved within the monthly budget, which seems silly because, again, these are contracts that we're paying just based on monthly services used. We have made the adjustments to meet their requirements. And the adjustments that we've made, we had to add $70,000 to facilities for their annual contracts, $22,000 to the Board of Health for their annual contracts, also to the Regional Housing Service Office, even though it's not part of the general fund budget, it's part of a budget that has to be appropriated at town meeting. We had to add $25,000 to account for their annual service contracts. And so adding these amounts still didn't bring us up to 1/12. So what I did was I put in the $1.5 million annual OPEB contribution that we typically would make in July, but we set that aside because the budget hadn't been approved by town meeting. But that was the easiest thing to put in to bring us to at least 1/12 of fiscal 20. So that's what I'm presenting to you today. That would mean that the request for August is $10,105,342.
All right. Are there any questions for, yes, Linda?
Carrie, when you mentioned about putting the OPEB amount in there, so that means you are going to go ahead and apply that as a payment to OPEB, or will you wait until?
So just because it's in there, it doesn't mean that we have to expend it.
Okay.
And I was thinking that I would wait at least until the end of the month. If there's any concern with making that payment in the month of August, we certainly don't have to do that. We could wait until after town meeting. But in order to meet the state's requirement of getting them to approve at least 1/12, I did put it in. But I'm happy to defer that until after town meeting if there's an interest in doing so. It certainly would not be the first time that we didn't make that payment in the first quarter of the fiscal year.
Yeah. Any other?
You're going to have a better sense of that, I think, with the draft preparation you've done on the budget. I was more interested in how this process is working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Are there any more questions for the board? Linda, I think you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm just still trying to understand why the Commonwealth wants us to spend at a minimum a 1/12 as opposed to a maximum, that would reflect what the town meeting has previously approved. It just seems like an unusual request from them. Do we have an understanding of why they're doing it this way?
So they want to approve a minimum of 1/12. I don't think they're not mandating spending at that level. It does seem counterintuitive to me, which is why when we went through a pretty detailed analysis to determine what we needed on a monthly basis, we just didn't need it in August.
Right. This is what just seems so odd, is that we're actually looking around for things to spend money on. It just seems, I still don't really understand why we're requested to do minimum instead of maximum. It almost seems like a typo to me.
Yeah, I can tell you it's not a typo because we did that in writing. We went back and forth with our rep at the Department of Revenue because it does seem counterintuitive. And she said that the division manager is looking to approve a minimum of 1/12, and that's giving us the authorization to expend, but not saying that we have to. So again, I'm happy to hold back on that OPEB contribution because it is something that we typically pay in the first quarter, but we haven't always paid it in the first quarter, and there certainly isn't any reason that it does need to be paid before town meeting.
Okay.
Good.
It's probably the easiest thing for me as the person watching the budget to keep control over, because that's an expenditure that I would make rather than adding to every department's budget.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Seeing none, now I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the monthly spending request for the month of August 2020 in the amount of $10,105,342.
Is there a second? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Thank you. I note that it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very, very much. See you next month. All right, the next item on our agenda is presenting the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. I see Kate and Brian here, so I don't know who's taking the lead, but welcome to you both.
Thank you. I'm going to take the lead and share my screen if that's all right. I have a few slides just to help us along. Great. Everyone see that?
Yes.
So hi everyone, Kate Hanley. For those of you who don't know me, Director of Sustainability for the town. Thanks so much for giving me some time on your agenda to present our recently completed Climate Action and Resilience Plan. The plan itself is called Sustainable Concord, and it's a comprehensive plan with a vision for creating a more sustainable and resilient Concord. And it's our roadmap to reducing emissions 80% by 2050 and addressing the impacts of climate change. More specifically, it's a commitment to 22 priority actions to take in the next 5 years and detailed implementation steps to help move those forward. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about why this plan and why now, because as you all know, Concord has been committed to sustainability for many decades, and thanks to the work of many volunteers and staff, progress has definitely been made. But Concord also, as you all know, has committed to reducing emissions 80% by 2050. And at our current pace, we won't meet that goal. So community-wide emissions fell 6% between 2008 and 2016, and that's less than 1% per year. to get on track to our 80% goal, we need to reduce by 2.5% per year. So we need to more than double the pace. And also, no matter how successful we are at reducing emissions, we will still see the impacts of climate change in Concord, and we're already seeing them through the process of receiving our MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness designation. In 2019, we identified many ways in which climate change poses a risk to Concord. So it's really important that we develop this plan to address climate in Concord, and thanks to the MVP grant program, we were eligible to receive grant funding from the state to help hire a consultant to work with us to develop this plan. So what makes this plan different and bold and new for Concord is two things. One is it addresses both climate mitigation, reducing our emissions, and resilience, being prepared. Concord is committed to both, and we've done a lot of work on both. But this plan integrates the two. And the second thing that makes this plan really different is that it takes a lot of the ideas and concepts and strategies discussed in other reports, and it prioritizes them. It takes those top 22 actions that we need to take in the next 5 years, and maybe most importantly, it details implementation steps for how to move those forward. So what's in this plan? Well, it's 22 priority actions, as I mentioned, organized into 5 plan elements, and each of those have goals. So the elements are built environment, energy, mobility, natural resources, and preparedness. So these actions are the what we're going to do to take action on climate. And each of them, as I mentioned, has implementation steps. So there's a blueprint that outlines how we're going to do it, including a champion, that's the who is going to lead it, and the time frame, so when we're going to take these steps. And so these implementation blueprints make up about half of the plan in terms of pages. It's pretty meaty, but it's intended to really be how we're going to move things forward. And the plan also includes 3 leadership priorities, because we know that taking action on climate will also require a focus on governance, education, and social resilience. So these are 3 overarching priorities for leadership in those areas. And this plan was developed primarily with the help of 2 groups that served as the primary advisors, the Climate Action Advisory Board, one of our town committees, and a municipal advisory team made up of a lot of the senior management team and other division heads. And we started by casting a wide net, looking at past reports and plans and identifying potential climate actions. We got input from the community and from our plan advisors. And we also looked really closely at high impact best practices from other communities around the country, science and data-based best practices that have been proven to have the highest potential for greenhouse gas reduction. We use guiding principles and really prioritize based on the highest potential for greenhouse gas reduction and to the highest potential to improve our resilience. Throughout the process, we worked to engage the community as much as possible, obviously made difficult in the final 4 or 5 months of this project with the pandemic, but we adapted to doing a lot online, like all of us have. We hosted a lot of events, surveys, and received comments through the website. And we also put out a draft for public comment in June. The comments we received were diverse and often conflicting, which my colleagues in other communities say is very typical of this type of planning process. Climate change is a complex problem with a lot of solutions at many scales, and it's just difficult to prioritize. So I think this is a really big step forward. So what's next for us is, the plan itself is available on the website as well as all the background documents. I'm going to continue sharing now that the plan is finished through the website and all the usual town channels. And we'll also be launching this new online dashboard, and that will be available to help be more interactive than the plan. It will be a way to explore some of the priority actions and related data in a more interactive way and connect those actions to what individuals can do to take action in their own day-to-day choices. The Climate Action Advisory Board has had a lot of conversations about accountability and reporting. So in the plan, we've committed to report out annually on progress and also do a full plan review and update in 5 years. And implementation, this is what I'm most excited about, is moving forward and implementing these actions. And I'll be working with the champions to advance the priority actions in the plan. We know that we need to do some more work to better understand the financing mechanisms and potential funding that we'll need to advance some of these, but we have the key steps to get started. So I just want to share some final thoughts. Just a huge thank you to everyone who's been part of this process. I'm really proud that this plan was completed on time and on budget. We did it in about 10 months, And the only part of it that went over budget was our expected in-kind contribution. Much more of my time than we had expected in the original grant application. I ended up spending the equivalent of 12 full-time work weeks on this plan, which was really time well spent because I have really delved in deep and reviewed and revised every inch of this plan, which will really set us up well for implementation. We certainly have some tough choices to make and things to figure out going forward, but this plan is really important in its setting of the clear priorities, and it will help us move past discussions about what to do and move into actually taking action. And it'll be really helpful for me in prioritizing the work of my division. So I want to say thank you, and certainly we'll take any questions you have. And I just thanks for listening and hope you'll accept this plan and support us in moving forward to implement. And I know Brian Folds, the chair of the Climate Action Advisory Board, is on as well. If you give him a few minutes, I'm sure he'd like to chime in.
So I want to thank Kate for all of her work. She did put a lot of work into this plan. It is, I've been active in sustainability for in town for quite a long time. And what this plan does is it casts a wide net. It works with, because sustainability is not someone's job. It's, Kate has her job as the director of sustainability, but she can't do it alone. And getting buy-in from the municipal leaders on the wording and the actions and having it presented to you and having the select board understand the plan and the town manager and to go back to that governance and accountability and just being able to say, here is what needs to be done. Not everything that can be done, which a lot of people gave feedback on. They really wanted to see things like people changing their diets to less meat. That is a good way to address climate change, but it's not something that we can really measure as we go forward. It's not something we can really implement as we can with other areas of the plan. So it kind of prioritizes our focus on where the town can have the biggest impact. I'm hoping this body will help us integrate this into all of those departments in their responsibilities, in their actions, in doing these things. As Kate said in her presentation, we've been reducing our emissions, which is wonderful, by about 1% a year. In order for us to meet our own goals, we're going to have to reduce it by 2.5 times that rate. And to meet the IPCC's goal for 2030, we're going to have to reduce that by 3.5%. This is not something that if we got rid of all the emissions from all the town departments and how they operate, that's a drop in the bucket. We need to create change in our community, work with our businesses, work with our residents, find out how we can get rid of some of the procedural problems that inhibit them to make change and to go use more of the light plant's electricity that's a clean source of energy, and to do the fuel switching. So it's a great plan. It really kind of breaks down the big question of what do we do to deal with sustainability into more bite-sized chunks and identifies the resources needed and the people that really need to move that part of the plan forward. So it really gives us a lot to work with. And that's the best thing about the plan. And I hope that in a year from now, when CAB does their update, that we have some good news, that we're on track in integrating this into town operations and really town culture.
I have a couple of questions. I'll be asked the board first. Do you have questions for Kate or Brian? Linda?
Thanks to everyone who did so much work to produce this plan. And I think you've done a good job of sort of taking a high level approach to helping us understand it. I have a couple questions, and one is, as I read through the report, I think you specifically did not at this time address the financial impact of all the suggestions that were in there. And do you have some thoughts, or did the committee talk about some thoughts about how they're going to deal with that going forward?
Yeah, that's right, Linda. And, the idea with this was to prioritize based on the climate impact. And so the plan takes the first step of identifying some of the potential financing or funding mechanisms for some of these actions. But the board has talked about that as a next step to get a better understanding of, moving these things forward. What are the resources that are going to be required? So that's something that I'm going to be working with the senior management team and the Climate Action Advisory Board on in the coming months.
Terrific. And then a second question, and I apologize for this getting down in the weeds a little bit, but this question has come up before, and that is, do we have any general sense of what it's costing us to retire RECs every year and what percentage of impact that's having on greenhouse gas emissions?
I could go on for hours about this, Kate. So do you want to take the synopsis route, or?
I don't have the latest. Yeah, I don't have the latest numbers, Linda, but maybe Brian can give you like the very, very good synopsis of the synopsis.
I will do my best. This is actually a topic for one of CAB's upcoming meetings, because we do want to go through this again in detail with the community, because it is a very important part to the plan. So generally, high level, the light board earlier this week, or I believe end of last week, voted to do an increase to that rate very soon. But so far, it's only been 1 penny per kilowatt hour. So it's a penny increase per kilowatt hour. And that has amounted to about $1.6 million. And what the light plant does with that is they buy the RECs, which is the certification of the clean energy. It is how the good attributes, the good positive environmental attributes are traded. And by holding those and retiring them, we can make that valid claim. And also by buying the class 1 RECs that the light plant is doing, we're being additive to the state's effort with the investor-owned utilities. We're not buying Texas wind or other things where those RECs are plentiful and have no value. We're doing it where what our communities around us that have Eversource, their efforts to decarbonize, we're being additive to that process. Does that answer your question at a high level without going crazy?
You did a very good job. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? Jane?
Well, first of all, I want to compliment as the liaison to this process. I want to compliment Brian and Kate, especially on the patience and the perseverance in a project that really stretched beyond the committee that often heard about it the most, just as that committee has other areas to focus on. So to have that as your only regular voice of townspeople or residents is sometimes it's challenging. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring up in terms of the public process. I want to think through a way of making sure that as this goes forward, and I like the idea of phase 2 being an economic assessment of the priorities, dovetailing that with a much more extensive community-based outreach or educational piece, because there's a real delta of the things that we can enact as policies or do as a municipality, and then all of the actions which Brian alluded to with the as a personal choice aspect, those who would choose not to eat meat. But a very large portion of the kind of actions that need to be taken to meet our goals are going to have to be personal choice on some level. And so that's going to be a not insignificant next phase. So,
and I think that one of the big challenges with COVID and where we are in the plan is that, connection to people. Going to the Stowe Street block party and talking about EVs was a great way to catch people who aren't thinking about sustainability, but maybe buying a car to think about it and to, potentially we had a ride and drive event for electric vehicles, which gave them the chance to drive these things they've heard about, but may not know. That work is extremely important because we can't dictate to half the emissions in our profile, which are residents, how they have to act in their everyday life. We have to show them that we have a better mousetrap that also is good for the environment. And I that's the thing I personally keep pushing. There are things in policy that we can do. Article 41 is a good example. If we were able to say, if you're building a spec home to build real estate and to sell it on, we want to make sure you don't put in, a 100-year, fossil fuel built structure. So we want you to fuel that with something that we can clean over time, which is electricity. So yes, that's going to be a big part.
Terry?
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian. I was going to state this at my observer report, but I was at the CSEC meeting on Friday, and they took up a great deal of time discussing this plan.
Mm-hmm.
They see their role as one of the big champions to help implement it and also to assist the other champions. So they're going to be spending a lot of time on that in their August meeting. And in particular, one of the big ideas that came out was, and Kate was helpful with this too, some kind of series of online webinars or videos or question and answer sessions or a combination of all of them. So they're going to be doing a lot more talking about that. And I think we have a really good system now. I don't think I understood originally a year ago what the difference was between CAB and CSEC. This plan, I really get it. You guys have outlined what we need to do, and now CSEC is real excited about going out and educating people and helping getting it implemented.
Yes.
And they're a tremendous resource and have been doing that really well for years. So I'm really excited that they're really embracing it and being very flexible and adaptive to our current working environment.
And that's a Terry, that was a great explanation of the difference between CSEC and CAB. CSEC does a lot of that educational, that persuasion, that explanation of these changes they can make. And CAB really kind of digs into the policy area and it finds the resources for departments that want to do some of these actions in the plan, but need examples from other towns, things like that. So, yeah, and CAB does a lot of the tracking of the inventory and that. So there's kind of a good description of the division for those two committees.
So, in addition, Linda had raised the issue of the financial impact. That was one of the things on my mind. The three other things on my mind were measurement, accountability, and whether or not 22 is too many.
Is what?
Too many. Okay. I mean, I know they're all important. I don't misunderstand.
It's certainly.
Should we be concentrating our effort on a few things and focusing our attention on those? And before you even answer, I think the select board can receive your report, which we're happy to do. Thank you very much for all your hard work. But then it's a question of whether we're converting it into town policy. And I would think that we want to devote perhaps an entire select board meeting sometime relatively soon to go through this in a little bit of real detail so that not only could we understand it more and some of its potential impacts, but we could really, as a board, begin to wrap our mind around what this is going to mean for the town now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So I would suggest that I can get to Kate and we can figure out the when of it all, but that we set aside some time over the course of the next few weeks to really just devote one of our meetings to having a more detailed discussion of this so we can think about converting it from an action plan to really broadly approved town policy. And and then we could address more directly those issues of financial impact, measurement, accountability, and the like. So, Matt, I think I saw your hand up, did I?
I think that would be wonderful.
I think that's excellent. And I would just add to that, as we think beyond town meeting, the town manager and the select board, will annually try to identify goals that they're going to be working on. And while I noticed in the report that the select board is mentioned in several locations in terms of who's going to do what, it often was at the end point after department heads and other groups had done a lot of work. So when you do come back at Mike's suggestion, if there are things that are more higher on the list in terms of near term, that would be helpful to the board to hear, I think.
Yeah, I just don't want to overstep boundaries. I want to make sure that we're here to help develop those policies and to bring them forward to you. If you want to be more involved in that process, I'm more than willing to bring CAB into that. But I don't want to take up a lot of your time to discuss things that our committee is already working on.
Well, I was directing it. Yeah,
it is our time, so I think we need to be much more.
I would love to.
This represents a significant goal that we've articulated in our town beginning a few years ago with the committee you were on, Brian, and we're taking strong actions at the municipal light plant. But as you indicated, those things alone simply aren't going to get the job done. And if we're serious, we've got to get this up on the ladder a little bit and more carefully looked at. So I would really appreciate having the opportunity to hear back from you. And I see Jane has her hand up.
Well, I was just going to compliment Linda. I think you got it exactly right, which is, as incorporating it more fully into the select board's goals and as we go through that next exercise, because again, while we might focus on Brian and CAB, this project really is bigger or broader than CAB as a committee. Mm-hmm. And Kate has really been, she's been balancing reporting to CAB on it, but also conducting a grant-inspired report that goes beyond any one mission, whether it's CSEC's mission to be an implementation force or whether it's CAB's mission. It really goes to answering a lot of cross-cutting spaces in sustainability that we can find throughout the long-range plan, but might not have come into a perfect box. And that's why I think that Mike's idea that we spend a full meeting really digging into it and figuring out how we can best lead with policy towards implementation is a great idea.
I'll get together with Kate and Brian offline, and we'll figure out how to proceed with that. So thank you both very much, and please extend our thanks to your entire
I think
committee.
You have a question.
Thanks, Mike.
Diane.
For those who may not know, could you explain what CAV is, and could you explain what CSAC is for people in the general audience who may not be familiar with those particular acronyms? Thank you.
Sure. So CAB is the Climate Action Advisory Board. That's one town committee. And CSEC is the Comprehensive Sustainability and Energy Committee, another town committee.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Matt or Stephen? I'm sorry, Stephen.
No, Matt was first, I think.
Okay, I just wanted to state that while there are many stakeholders here, I think that we at the select board will have a special responsibility here, and maybe rather than just one big meeting that's just devoted to this, I would like to see a regular cadence maybe a quarterly cadence where we look at a couple of the plan elements at a time, and that we set that cadence on an ongoing basis, not just look at it as a one-time event, but that, on a quarterly basis for the next few years, we're likely to be wanting to gauge progress, the next plans, the costs and all of those things, because I do believe that, this is critical for us. We've already made some commitments here as a town, and to follow through, it's not a one-time deal. The other thing I wanted to mention was relative to Article 40. The Attorney General ruled on most of the Brookline items last week, withholding just their fossil fuel article, which will be ruled upon tomorrow. And so we will know some more about that tomorrow. And then finally, I did have one question, which is how would a stormwater utility operate? What is the objective, and how would it work?
I'm going to let Kate handle that one.
I was actually going to ask Stephen because he has experience in that more directly than I do.
Sounds great.
I do. So first of all, I did want to say, I wanted to just chime in and just thank Kate for her work pushing us forward, and Brian and the work of the committee as well for guiding all of that. And to just, I think Kate would agree that as a team, the town departments understand what the expectations of the community are. And I think while Jane used the word balance, which I think is an important word in all of this, balancing costs, operational needs, and environmental impacts are something that I think we do regularly. I do think the climate action plan or climate action resiliency plan does give us a framework to maybe look at operational considerations a little differently, where we can maybe tip that balance a little more away from the traditional models and into things that may be more sustainable. So I do think the organization, even before my time, has been committed to certainly moving in that direction, trying to find ways to be more sustainable. In terms of a stormwater utility, we actually did establish one of those in Long Meadow when I was there, and the essence of it. Matt, I don't know if you want to know the basics, if that's the question, but the basics are, in fact, Westford has just established one too. I did get a notice that I'm getting a bill for that in the near future as well, and it's a great program. It helps manage stormwater management, not water or not wastewater or domestic water. It's strictly rain, runoff, things like that. And essentially for every impervious space, whether it's a roof or a parking lot or something else, it creates runoff demands on the rest of the drainage system. And to fund improvements and to fund new federal requirements of what's called the MS4 Municipal Storm Sewer System permits. All towns are going to have to spend more money on managing stormwater and runoff than they have in the past. And stormwater utilities are a way to fund that. The basic model is you have an equivalent residential unit, an ERU. And so a house, your average house is one ERU, and that has a certain number of square feet of impervious surface based on driveway, roof, etc. And then commercial properties are a certain number of ERUs, which is that average number times whatever they actually have. And it's all determined by Mass GIS orthography, aerial photos. And towns can, in Long Meadow, we created a rate structure that made sense for our build out. So there is some flexibility in it, but we found it to be an effective thing and really not only offsets cost pressures for increased expenditures to comply with MS4, but also allowed us to, most importantly, raise awareness of stormwater issues. And there are educational components that are a part of the MS4 process. So usually it's covered by a bylaw, and people get billed on their water. I think we have one utility bill, but it goes out on a water or sewer bill generally. I think the bills, we're not talking thousands of dollars a year for household. We're talking less than hundreds of dollars a year per household, usually, on how these are built. So it's not a burdensome thing, but collectively it makes a big difference in funding the system. So I do see one in Concord's future. I just don't know. We would just have to do some engineering, quite honestly, to kind of get us to a point where we could present that at the town meeting.
Thank you.
this is Steve, what your description is a great example of how good policy and looking at the way we operate can help trigger people to do the right actions at the right time. You said that, it gets people to think about it when they're building the new construction. As someone who built a house in Concord, I got a LEED certification. So I got a green certification on my home. Part of that process was to calculate the impermeable surfaces. And it was a point system. So I was triggered to then try to make a very permeable lot. Those kinds of things are what we need to try to dig into the details of, present it to you to help good policy moving forward so we can become a more sustainable town in the future. So it's a good example of what we're trying to do with the Climate Action Plan.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And I'll get with you, Brian and Kate, and we'll get some next steps figured out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is how to proceed with select board positions on warrant articles. So as Matt pointed out, I learned late last week that the Attorney General is going to issue a ruling sometime this week. And so I changed the warrant article that used to say taking positions on warrant articles to how to proceed. So I wanted to wait until we got a ruling from the Attorney General on that particular article. The only other articles that really we can take positions on are the citizen petition articles. The rest of the articles we're going to want to wait. We've already done the consent agenda, so that's been done. And the only other ones are the ones that are going to come up either at the planning board or select board and the finance committee. So really the only articles left for us to take positions on are articles like Article 40. And then I don't have the exact number, but some number of petition articles that were near the end of the warrant. So the question is, do we want to just take those up at our next meeting and be done with them, or do we want to wait until we've finished the public hearings and just go through our lists and take positions on all those particular articles? And I really don't have a preference, but I'd like to hear your point of view on the matter.
So Mike, I have a related question, and that is, I know that there is a timeline for the Finance Committee report where positions are often, select board positions are often referenced.
Right.
Do we know that date for sure?
We do. It's the Finance Committee report has to go to the printer by August 24th, and then we'll be back and mailed out to the citizens on the 3rd of September, and that's the 10 days requirement for sending a Finance Committee report out.
And so related to your question about the citizen petitions, do you have some idea of when the select board might be taking a position after the public hearings? Will it be the immediate following? Or?
I spoke briefly with Dean. His intent is after the Finance Committee the joint hearing on the 17th with the Finance Committee, he's going to convene his Finance Committee then, right after the public hearing, and deal with those, I think it's 5 articles that he's going to deal with then. And he plans to do the same thing on the 18th to deal with the remaining articles. And so for us, we could do exactly the same thing. The public hearing is at 7 o'clock. I think it will probably take an hour and a half to get through it. We could simply schedule a meeting to begin at 9 o'clock and deal with those articles, or we could schedule it the following day. But I think we have time. The planning boards is on the 19th, and they actually have more articles to review than than either of these joint meeting with the Finance Committee or the Finance Committee solo meeting to deal with. So their public hearing is probably going to go a little bit longer. But we could simply schedule a meeting, that following Monday and deal with all of the articles then. So it's just your pleasure. Anybody have a point of view?
Well, I think that we should take a position in time to make it into that August 24th publication.
We will.
Right.
The question is, do we want to, so let me phrase it question, do we want to, at an upcoming meeting before the public hearings, take a position on all of the citizen warrant articles? That's a question. The second is on the public hearings on the 17th and 18th, do we want to schedule a select board meeting following those meetings? Or do we just want to set up a select board meeting for sometime later that week and deal with all of the articles? So we're definitely going to get our information into the Finance Committee. And I would suggest if we do the latter, we would have the meeting on the 20th, which is a Thursday. And we would just meet at 4 o'clock and plow our way through it. Yes, Susan?
I like the idea, since we're all probably going to be tuned into the hearings to see what the input is, to tag on a meeting afterwards when the information's kind of fresh in our minds. And
that's fine with me. I think if we do that, we still will have to schedule a meeting on Thursday to deal with the planning board articles, because that, I suspect, I forget the exact number that they have to contend with, but it's not a trivial number.
I think that's a good idea. And also the 20th could be a backup. If for some reason we get in a really long debate and it gets really late and we can't finish on one of those nights, then we can finish on that article on the 20th.
All right. So then now let's come back to the very first question. Shall we just at a separate meeting maybe not next week, because I think we have a significant agenda item next week, but at a subsequent meeting, should we just take up all of the citizen petition articles at one time and be done with them? And then we will have also heard from the AGA about the Brookline case, so we can take that up. Does that seem reasonable?
It does.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
So not the 27th, but whatever the Monday is after the 27th, we'll take up the citizen petition articles. I'll schedule a meeting following the joint meeting. Essentially, we will just adjourn, and the agenda item for our joint meeting with the Finance Committee will be taking up all of the public articles that night, and then we will just reconvene at a different Zoom address to continue our meeting to take positions. I'll do that on the 17th to the 18th. And then I'll schedule a meeting for 4 o'clock on the 20th. I don't know, let me back. Can we do it at 9 in the morning on the August 20th? I want to be able to get everything to the Finance Committee as soon as we can. So if we met at 9 o'clock, we'd probably be done by
I can.
At 10 o'clock. Susan?
I can. Mm-hmm.
Terry? Jane?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the 17th, the 18th, and the 20th at 9 a.m. And then we'll take the citizen petition articles up 2 weeks from tonight. All right, thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Did you say, I thought the 9 a.m. was going to be on the 20th, but the 17th and 18th is after the hearings. Is that right?
I hope that's what I said. If it's not, I should have.
Okay.
Yes. And then we'll just, at our 2 weeks from today, we'll take up all the citizen petition articles. All right, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is committee nominations, and although we don't have one on the agenda, Jane, I know you have one.
Yes, I think this, we just missed this one, but it's a little overdue. I wanted to nominate Dennis Fiore of 309 Strawberry Hill Road to the HDC, the Historic Districts Commission. It will be his second term, but these are not consecutive, and he has the full support of the members of the HDC. So I nominate Dennis Fiore.
All right, thank you. And we will have him on the agenda to appoint at a subsequent meeting. The next item on our agenda is liaison reports. Who would like to begin?
I'll dive in.
Jane, please.
Okay. The Climate Action Advisory Board is one of mine. I think that's been well discussed. I will say at the most recent meeting, there was a presentation by Abigail Aherns, who has been our intern from University of New Hampshire she's been developing the sustainability guidelines for historic homes. And this is a wonderful bridge issue between both the HDC and CAB. And I know that she has presented to the HDC in the past, but I think that her report is going to, will help guide or at least offer options to the HDC in terms, really, I mean, if you think in lines with the Climate Action and Resiliency Report, all of these start to fall in line under the long-range plans. Hope that we synthesize our committee and our government actions to, in a sense, reap the most from cross segments. And I'm looking forward to hearing her present again on her report as it's finalized to the HDC. As I said, that's enough from CAB. There was an HDC meeting. The most observed piece of it was a continuation of discussion of the amendment to the library edition, which was continued so that the committee members could become more comfortable with the legal position of the settled agreement. Other than that, the only other thing I wanted to report on was a question, and I don't know whether anybody on the call or on the Zoom will have an answer for this, but there has been the new member of the White Pond Association has been nominated and appointed, but she has been unable to be sworn in so far, and there was concern about whether or not she could attend. I suggested she could attend the meetings but not vote until she's been sworn in. I'm not sure how those swearing-ins have gone on in COVID. Right. Well, that's what I suggested.
Why can't she get sworn in?
I am unfamiliar, but apparently it's a two-car thing. I don't. It's the social distancing piece. I really don't understand the.
She should be able just to go to the townhouse and.
Is the seat vacant?
Yes, there have been some vacancies along that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think people can get sworn in. They can make an appointment with Kari Tari, get sworn in, but depending on the position and how it was created, it may not be available to start the term until after town meeting, in which case Kari would not swear them in until after town meeting.
I believe the seat was vacant, but that may shed some light on the.
I think she should just be encouraged to call the town clerk or write to Kari.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right. Who's next? Susan?
Okay.
Linda, go ahead.
I attended the Disability Commission specifically to hear their discussion about the library settlement. And I have to say that I'll just comment that this is not one of my regular committees, but I have to say that Jean Goldberry does such a wonderful job in terms of being inclusive of, and there were a high number of guests that night because of the agenda items, and she does a really nice job with that. I also attended the chairs meeting, and then a small group of us recently discussed what the hearing schedule would look like for the town meeting. And also there was a small group that met to trying to get an update on the TIF. I just want to mention that 229 Main Street has a couple vacancies, and they're looking for someone with environmental science background or legal background. And remind everyone that the Nuclear Metals Reuse Planning Committee has a survey that's still open. You have to find it on the Reuse Plan, the Nuclear Metals Inc. Reuse Planning Committee page on the town website. But do look for that survey and fill it out. Input is really needed.
Great. Susan?
I have nothing to report. I went to the chairs meeting, but it was a quiet week. Thank you.
Right, Terry?
Okay, so I've already reported on CSEC, good meeting there, and I too attended as liaison the Commission on Disability. I agree with Linda. Jean runs a very, very nice, welcoming meeting, and we had a great crowd. The library people and the HDC did have a very productive discussion, and there were members. I should say the library and the Commission on Disabilities and the HDC, they were all in attendance, so it was a very productive discussion. Another thing that came out of that meeting was that they're going to be working with the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. We need some more signage. One suggestion was something like wear a mask when you pass, because we've had people in wheelchairs who cannot get out of the way fast enough when bikes come by, and they're very worried about their safety. So they're going to be working with Marcia, I think, on some signage there. And then I attended the West Concord Junction Cultural District. Again, there are some beautiful doors that Nancy Lippy at the Umbrella put together a whole project for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And another project that's really exciting is Margot Kimball is working with a large group of volunteers on a great big mural that's going to be painted. It's already like halfway or more done, and it's going to be hung somewhere in West Concord. They have a tentative location, but they're not totally sure yet, and maybe it will be unveiled at Discover West Concord Day. This is a very big community project. There are lots and lots of people participating, and it's really beautiful. And then the sad news is that they've canceled the Porch Fest for this year. Maybe next spring or a year from now.
Very great. Thank you very much. I attended a number of meetings this week with a school committee meeting. Important item there was an update on their budgets. They are required to submit their budget by, I think, July 31st. So next week, they're having a special meeting on July 30th to go over the proposed budget and make whatever changes they need. And then the superintendent will be submitting that on the 31st. I also attended Cargo Trust Committee, where they're mostly discussing silent fund camperships and tax relief updates. And I attended the light board planning meeting or light board meeting. And Brian already had mentioned that they had a rate hearing for energy rate. And I think I recall that the rate was raised by 1 penny. And then as I chaired the chair's breakfast on Wednesday, always a very informative meeting. And then, as Linda mentioned, we had a meeting with the chair and the vice chair of the finance committee and the moderator to talk about public hearings. And I had a meeting with the community leaders about community events. One of the ones Stephen mentioned, the drive-in movie on the 29th. Isn't there a second one planned too, Stephen? August 12th? No, that's not right.
Yeah, there is a second one planned. We are engaging with the vendor for 2 events. I guess part of me is like, let's see how the first one goes before we heavily promote the second one. But we do have 2 lined up. Yes, and I want to say, yeah, you're right. I don't want to say the wrong date, but yes, we do have 2 set up.
So it's sometime in August or early August.
If you give me a second, I can tell you right when it is.
Okay. While you're looking, final thing was we had a meeting with the finance committee. No, excuse me, with the chair of the finance committee, Linda, and Walter Ohanian, and folks from the housing authorities to make sure we were all up to speed on what has transpired with respect to Junction Village and Christopher Heights, because that's going to be one of the items on the joint select board finance committee public hearing on the 17th. So it was good to get an update with that. And they reported at that they are reducing the length of time of the TIF from 17 to 15 years. They were able to do that. So, Stephen, that's something that we have to attend to. We have to get the MOU that we signed with them updated to reflect that new length of time of the TIF going from 17 to 15. So I want to try to get that done. Did you find the date?
I did. It is August 13th, and we're planning on showing Shrek August 13th, which is a Thursday.
Okay, August 13th to Thursday. Great.
For the drive-through to see Shrek.
We had a number of correspondence. I've decided.
Mike, can I just ask a question about that last item, the TIF? Why were they able to reduce it from 17 to 15 years? Did something change?
No, nothing has changed. They just decided that they would. They just decided they could pull it back 2 years. He was concerned about borrowing going forward, but he just said he could bring it back 2 more years. So nothing has changed. They received $7.6 million in tax credits, and they received another $3 million. So they have all of their capital in place now. And their issue now is going out to get their debt. They have to produce an operating plan, and that's the reason for the TIF. So the next item on our agenda is public comments. Are there any public comments? Diane?
Thank you. I wondered if you could just remind citizens where they can read the revised warrant article that will be presented at the public hearing. We certainly have received warrants earlier, and so where can we find the revised versions of those warrant articles?
For the public hearings, you mean?
For the public hearings and in advance of those to read them and study them.
Sure. No. Well, we have sent notes out to everybody that if there are any revisions, we need to get them, and as soon as we get them, we sort of will. I know one revision for Article 40, if we go forward with it, is that it applies only to new construction now, so that's a change. And there's going to be changes in the budgets, I suspect, coming forward. So those will have to be done as well. So as soon as we have them, we'll get them posted. Any other? Yeah.
So just on the budgets, I would say by the end of this month, we will have presented to the Finance Committee revised budgets.
Well, I would hope, Stephen, that before you present to the Finance Committee, you would share your potential revisions with the Select Board.
Yes.
And the Planning Board will be reviewing the revised language for Article 34 at its meeting on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right.
I think that just in general, if there were a way to post that someplace on the website so that people who are trying to follow the discussions would know how to do so in a timely way. Thank you very much.
Good point. Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second? Somebody has to unmute themselves.
Okay.
Second, all right, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
Mr. Lawson,
Aye.
myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Thank you. I know it passes unanimously. Thank you all very much for attending. Please stay well.
Stay cool.
Thank you.
Aye.